The commander's morning chaos. The morning alarm shrieked through Commander Riker's quarters like a dying star whale, but he was already awake, had been for the past hour, actually, staring at the ceiling and mentally preparing for another day of single parenthood aboard the Celestial Dominion. Father. Father. The food synthesizer is making that noise again, came the dual chorus from the galley, followed by what sounded like a small controlled explosion. Riker bolted upright, his feet hitting the cold metal floor as smoke began seeping under his bedroom door. Pyra. Pyro. Step away from the molecular reconstructor. He burst into the galley to find his 7-year-old twin dragonling standing innocently beside a smoking machine that was supposed to provide their breakfast. Pyra, with her brilliant crimson scales gleaming even in the emergency lighting, held what remained of a nutrient packet. Her twin brother Pyro, azure scales shimmering with mischief, was poking at the machine with his tail. "We were hungry," Pyra announced matter-of-factly. "And you were taking too long. So we thought we'd help," Pyro added, his small wings fluttering with what Riker had learned to recognize as barely contained excitement. The molecular reconstructor gave one final wheeze and died completely. Riker ran his hands through his hair and surveyed the damage. Nutrient paste was splattered across 3 walls, the hydration unit was beeping frantically, and somehow, he still couldn't figure out how, one of his gravity boots was stuck to the refrigeration unit. "All right, little ones," he said, forcing calm into his voice. "Emergency rations it is." 20 minutes later, they sat around their small dining table. The twins picked at their emergency food bars with the enthusiasm of condemned prisoners, while Riker tried to ignore the way they kept exchanging glances. "Father," Pyra began carefully, "these taste like recycled air filters." With a hint of engine lubricant, Pyro added helpfully. Riker sighed. "I know they're not great, but—" "The last caretaker made better food," Pyra interrupted. "Actually, all 15 of the last caretakers made better food," Pyro corrected. 14, Riker muttered. "Android Unit 7 doesn't count because you reprogrammed it to only speak Ancient Draconic." The twins giggled, a sound like tiny bells mixed with the rumble of distant thunder. Despite everything, Riker felt his heart warm. These two were his world, even if they were slowly driving him to madness. "Speaking of caretakers," he said, standing to clear their plates, "Lieutenant Lyra thinks she might have found someone new." Both dragonlings perked up immediately. "Will they let us stay up past sleep cycle?" Pyra asked hopefully. "Will they teach us to use the combat simulator?" Pyro added. "Will they not scream when we practice our flame breath in the corridors?" They chorused together. Riker paused in his dish clearing. "You know, little ones, maybe we should talk about why the caretakers keep leaving." But the twins had already bounded off toward their rooms, their conversation drifting back to him. "I hope this one lasts longer than 3 days. Remember Caretaker Unit 12? She lasted 4 hours. That's because you told her we eat metal for snacks." "We do eat metal for snacks sometimes." Riker leaned against the counter and closed his eyes. Somewhere across the station, a woman named Aara was about to answer Lyra's call about a caretaking position. She had no idea what she was getting into. But then again, neither did he when he'd first become a single father to 2 grieving dragonlings who'd lost their mother when they were barely hatched. Maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. The communication panel chimed, indicating an incoming message from his executive officer. The interview was scheduled for this afternoon. Pyra. Pyro. "We're going to meet your potential new caretaker today," he called out. The response came back immediately, "Does she know we're exceptional?" Despite everything, Riker smiled. "Yes, little ones. I'm sure she'll figure that out very quickly." Aara's escape. Aara's hands trembled as she sealed the last of her belongings into a single travel case. 3 years of marriage, and everything she owned fit into one small container. Behind her, she could hear Madame Moria's voice rising in the common area, berating Marcus about something trivial, probably the way he'd arranged his boots by the door. Useless woman can't even keep a proper household, came the familiar refrain through the walls. What good is a wife who can't give you children? I told you to find someone fertile, not some career woman who's too old to breed. Aara closed her eyes and took a steadying breath. In 2 hours, she had an interview aboard the Celestial Dominion. Lieutenant Lyra had been vague about the details, only saying that Commander Riker needed someone capable of handling challenging children, and that the pay was substantial enough to afford her own quarters. Her own quarters. The thought made her chest tight with something she'd almost forgotten, hope. Aara. Marcus's voice cut through her thoughts. Mother wants her evening meal prepared. And make sure you use the good plates this time. She straightened her shoulders and walked into the common area. Marcus sat in his favorite chair, not looking up from his data pad, while Madame Moria lounged on the sofa like a queen holding court. I'm leaving, Aara announced quietly. Both of them looked up, startled. Leaving? Marcus laughed. To go where? You have no job, no prospects, no. I have an interview this afternoon. For a caretaker position on the Celestial Dominion. Madame Moria snorted. A caretaker? You went from project administrator to domestic servant. How the mighty have fallen. At least I'll be earning my own credits, Aara replied, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. Marcus stood up, his expression darkening. You're not going anywhere. You're my wife, and your place is here. My place, Aara said, picking up her travel case, is wherever I can be treated like a sentient being instead of a failed breeding experiment. For the first time in 3 years, she walked out without looking back. The transport to the Celestial Dominion took 40 minutes, giving Aara time to review what little information Lyra had provided. Commander Riker, single father, 2 children of draconic heritage, previous caretakers had struggled with the position. The pay was generous, room and board included, and the children were described as spirited but ultimately good-hearted. As the luxury space station came into view, Aara felt her confidence waver. The Celestial Dominion was massive, gleaming white and silver against the star field, with observation decks and docking bays that spoke of serious wealth. What was she doing here? She was running from a bad marriage with no recent work experience and no credentials for childcare. But when the transport docked and she stepped into the pristine corridors, something shifted inside her. The air was clean and recycled properly, not the stale mixture she'd been breathing for 3 years. The walls were decorated with art instead of complaints and criticism. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, nobody was telling her she was worthless. The reception area was elegant but comfortable, with soft seating and gentle lighting. A young officer with kind eyes approached her. Ms. Aara? I'm Lieutenant Lyra. Thank you for coming. Thank you for considering me, Aara replied. Though I should be honest, I don't have experience with draconic children. Lyra smiled. To be frank, neither did our last 14 caretakers. Experience isn't what Pyra and Pyro need most. What do they need? Someone who sees them as children first, exceptional beings second. Someone who won't be intimidated by their heritage or their creativity. They walked through corridors lined with viewports showing the star field outside. Aara had never seen anything so beautiful. Their mother, she asked gently, died when they were barely hatched. Riker adopted them from a refugee station. They've been through more loss than most adults. Lyra stopped at a lift and looked at Aara seriously. They're good children, but they're hurt. And hurt children sometimes push people away to see if they'll stay. The lift doors opened, and Aara stepped inside, her heart already opening to 2 children she hadn't even met yet. I understand, she said quietly. Sometimes adults do the same thing. As they rose toward the residential levels, Aara felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the sense that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The interview and connection. Commander Riker paced his quarters like a caged star lion, checking his chronometer every 30 seconds. The twins were in their room, supposedly organizing their educational materials but more likely plotting some elaborate test for their potential new caretaker. "Father," Pyra called out, "should we hide the quantum physics texts or leave them out so she knows we're intellectually advanced?" "Leave them out," Pyro answered before Riker could respond. "But maybe hide the scorch marks on the wall from when we practiced indoor flame breathing." "Good thinking. And put away the molecular models we built that accidentally achieved fusion." Riker rubbed his temples. Sometimes he forgot that his 7-year-olds had the intellectual capacity of adolescent dragons, which meant they were roughly equivalent to teenage humans with advanced degrees and the emotional regulation of, well, 7-year-olds. The door chime sounded, and his heart rate spiked. "Pyra. Pyro. She's here. Remember what we discussed about first impressions. No flame breathing indoors," they chorused. "No demonstrating our ability to phase through solid matter. No challenging her to combat trials. And no asking if she's our new mother." That last one made Riker pause. They'd only started asking that recently, and it broke his heart every time. He opened the door to find Lieutenant Lyra standing beside a woman who was, not what he'd expected. She was smaller than he'd imagined, with silver-streaked brown hair pulled back simply in clothing that spoke of modest means. But her eyes held a quiet strength that reminded him of deep space, vast and steady and somehow comforting. "Commander Riker," Lyra said formally, "may I present Aara Thorne?" "Miss Thorne," Riker extended his hand, noting the firm grip and the way she met his eyes directly. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for considering me," she replied. Her voice was warm but measured. "I understand you have 2 children who need care." Before he could respond, there was a thunderous crash from the twins' room, followed by Pyro's voice, "It wasn't me. It was both of us." Pyra corrected. Aara's eyebrows rose slightly, but she didn't look alarmed. Instead, she almost looked amused. "Perhaps I should meet them," she suggested. Riker led her down the short corridor to the twins' room, where he found Pyra and Pyro standing innocently beside an overturned bookshelf, academic texts scattered everywhere. "Little ones," he said with practiced patience, "we have a guest." The twins turned, and Riker watched Aara's face carefully. Most people's first reaction to seeing young dragonlings was either fear or excessive fascination. Pyra and Pyro, even at 7, were impressive, nearly as tall as human children but with elegant scaled features, bright intelligent eyes, and small wings that fluttered when they were excited or nervous. Aara simply smiled and stepped forward. "Hello," she said, crouching down to their eye level. "I'm Aara. You must be Pyra and Pyro. How did you know which is which?" Pyro asked suspiciously. "Most humans can't tell. Your father mentioned that Pyra prefers crimson accessories and you favor azure. Also," she gestured to the scattered books, "Pyra was holding the advanced xenobiology text, and Pyro had the stellar engineering manual. You each have different interests." The twins exchanged glances. Their secret communication look that Riker knew meant they were reassessing the situation. "Are you going to run away when we practice our natural abilities?" Pyra asked directly. "What kind of natural abilities?" Aara asked with genuine curiosity. "Well," Pyro began importantly, "we can breathe fire, obviously. And we're learning to phase through certain molecular structures. Oh, and we can sense emotional states through bioelectromagnetic fields." "Fascinating," Aara said, and Riker could tell she meant it. "Those sound like wonderful gifts. I imagine they require a lot of practice and control." "Exactly," Pyra exclaimed. "Finally, someone who understands that we're not just showing off. Most caretakers think we're being destructive," Pyro added. "But we're really just learning." Aara nodded seriously. "Learning can be messy sometimes. That's okay." For the next hour, Riker watched in amazement as Aara talked with his children. She didn't talk down to them, but she didn't treat them like adults either. She asked about their studies, their interests, their favorite foods. She helped them reorganize their bookshelf and showed genuine interest when Pyro explained his theory about quantum entanglement in dragon telepathy. Most remarkably, she didn't flinch when Pyra accidentally let out a small puff of flame while getting excited about her molecular chemistry project. "Impressive flame control," Aara commented. "Very precise." Pyra beamed. When Lieutenant Lyra returned to escort Aara back for the formal interview portion, the twins actually looked disappointed to see her go. "Father," Pyra whispered as soon as the adults left, "I like her. She listens to us like we're real people," Pyro added. "She didn't try to hug us or call us adorable little dragons," Pyra continued. "And she smells like kindness," Pyro finished. Riker blinked. "She smells like kindness?" "It's hard to explain to humans," Pyra said patiently. "But she does. Like someone who's been sad but isn't mean about it." An hour later, after the formal interview process, Riker found himself offering Aara the position. Her references were impeccable, her background check clear, and most importantly, his children had connected with her in a way he hadn't seen before. "When can you start?" he asked. "Tomorrow, if that works for you," she replied. "I have very little to pack." That evening, as he tucked the twins into their beds, Pyro looked up at him seriously. "Father, are you going to marry Aara?" Riker nearly dropped Pyro's bedtime hydration unit. "What? No. She's your caretaker, not, why would you ask that?" "Because you smiled differently when you looked at her," Pyra said matter-of-factly. "And because she looked at us like we were her cubs already," Pyro added. "And because you need someone to take care of you too," they said together. Riker tucked them in, kissed their foreheads, and tried not to think about how his 7-year-old dragonlings might be more perceptive than he was comfortable admitting. The Queen's arrival. 3 months had passed since Aara joined their family, and that's what it had become, Riker realized, a family. The twins had stopped testing her after the first week, when she'd calmly cleaned up after their accidental flooding of the bathroom and then taught them how to use their water manipulation abilities constructively to help with chores. More importantly, they'd stopped asking every morning if she was going to leave. Riker was reviewing station reports when his comm unit chimed with an urgent message that made his blood run cold. "Commander," came the formal voice of his communications officer, "we have an incoming vessel requesting docking clearance. It's the Celestial Sovereign, flagship of the Draconic Royal Fleet. They're requesting immediate audience with you regarding the young dragons in your care." Riker's hands went numb. The twins' mother had been of royal blood, not the Queen herself, but close enough to the royal line that her death had been noted in the imperial records. He'd always known this day might come, but he'd hoped. "Sir," the communications officer prompted. "Should I grant docking clearance?" "Yes," Riker managed. "Full diplomatic protocols. And, notify Lieutenant Lyra to prepare the formal reception chamber." He cut the connection and sat in stunned silence for a moment before forcing himself to move. He had to tell Aara. He had to tell the twins. He had to figure out how to explain that their grandmother, their royal grandmother, was coming to see them, and she might want to take them away. He found Aara in the family quarters, helping Pyro with his advanced mathematics while Pyra practiced her flame control nearby. The domestic scene was so peaceful it made his heart ache. "Aara," he said quietly, "I need to speak with you privately." She looked up immediately, recognizing the tone. "Children, continue your studies. I'll be right back." In the corridor, he explained quickly. Aara's face grew pale, but her voice remained steady. "What does this mean for them?" she asked. "I don't know. Legally, she has a stronger claim than I do. They're her grandchildren, and she's royalty. If she wants to take them." "She can't," Aara said fiercely, surprising him with her vehemence. "Riker, those children have been through enough loss. They're settled here. They're happy. They're—" She stopped abruptly, her hand going to her mouth. "They're what?" he asked gently. "They're mine," she whispered. I know I have no legal right to them, but they're mine. And I'm theirs. And I won't let anyone hurt them again. Before he could respond, Pyra's voice called out from the quarters, "Father? Aara? Why do you both smell like distress?" They returned to find both twins looking at them with the unnaturally perceptive expressions that reminded Riker they were anything but ordinary children. "There's something we need to tell you," Riker began, but Pyro interrupted. "Our grandmother is coming, isn't she?" he said matter-of-factly. "You can sense it?" Aara asked. "We felt the ship approaching," Pyra explained. "It has the same energy signature as Mother did, but stronger. Much stronger." "Are you afraid?" Aara asked, sitting beside them. The twins exchanged one of their looks. "We're concerned," Pyra said carefully, "that she might want to take us away from you and Father." "We don't want to go," Pyro added firmly. "This is our home. You're our family." Riker felt his chest tighten. "Little ones, she's your grandmother. She has rights." "We don't care about rights," Pyra interrupted. "We care about love. And we love you and Aara. Besides," Pyro added with a slight smile, "she's about to be very surprised." "What do you mean?" Riker asked. The twins grinned, identical expressions that usually meant trouble. "You'll see," they said together. 2 hours later, Riker stood in the formal reception chamber wearing his dress uniform, with Aara beside him in her best clothing and the twins flanking them. The doors opened, and Queen Seraphina entered with a retinue of guards and advisors. She was magnificent and terrifying, nearly 8 feet tall, with scales that shifted between deep purple and silver, eyes like galaxies, and an presence that seemed to fill the entire room. Ancient and powerful, she moved with the fluid grace of a predator who had never known fear. Her gaze swept over Riker dismissively, paused on Aara with mild curiosity, then fixed on the twins with an intensity that made the air itself seem to vibrate. "Grandchildren," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated in the bones. "Grandmother," Pyra and Pyro replied politely, but they didn't move from their positions beside Aara. The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly. "You will come with me. Your place is at court, learning your heritage, preparing for your roles in the Empire." "No, thank you," Pyra said calmly. The Queen's expression would have been comical if it weren't so potentially dangerous. "Excuse me." "We respectfully decline," Pyro added. "We're happy here." "You are dragons of royal blood," the Queen said, her voice rising. "You belong with your own kind, not with these, humans." "Our father is human," Pyra pointed out. "Our caretaker is human. Our family is human. We are also human." "You are dragons," the Queen roared, flames escaping her mouth. Riker started to step forward, but Aara caught his arm. The twins, incredibly, didn't even flinch. "We are what we choose to be," Pyro said quietly. "And we choose to be loved." The Queen stared at them for a long moment, then turned her attention to Aara. "And you, human? What is your role in this?" Aara lifted her chin. "I take care of them. I teach them. I love them. You are not their mother." "No," Aara agreed. "But I am their family." The Queen studied her for a long moment, then did something unexpected. She leaned down and inhaled deeply near Aara. "You smell of them," she said, surprised. "You carry their scent as if you were their maternal figure." "That's because she is," Pyra said simply. "She's our Aara. And we're her cubs," Pyro added. Queen Seraphina straightened slowly, her expression unreadable. "I came here to reclaim my grandchildren. To bring them home to their proper place." "This is our proper place," the twins said together. The Queen looked at them for a long moment, then at Aara, then at Riker. Finally, she sighed, a sound like wind through caverns. "Very well. I will observe. I will stay for 1 week to see this family that has claimed my grandchildren." If I am not satisfied with their care, they will come with me. Riker felt his knees go weak with relief. A week. He had a week to prove that love was stronger than blood, that family was more than genetics. Thank you, Your Majesty, he said. Do not thank me yet, the Queen replied. I am not easily impressed. But as she spoke, Riker noticed something. The twins had moved closer to Aara, and she had instinctively put her arms around them. And Queen Seraphina was watching the protective gesture with something that might have been approval. The real test was just beginning. The Queen's discovery. Queen Seraphina had expected many things during her week of observation. She had expected to find her grandchildren living in substandard conditions, yearning for their draconic heritage, perhaps even being mistreated or neglected. What she had not expected was to find herself hiding behind a structural support beam at 0600 hours, watching the most remarkable breakfast routine she had ever witnessed. Aara moved through the small galley with quiet efficiency, preparing 3 different meals simultaneously. For Commander Riker, she made standard human breakfast fare. For herself, simple nutrition bars and CAF that suggested credits were still tight despite her employment. But for the twins. Pyra, your flame-seared protein is ready, Aara called softly. Extra crispy, just how you like it. And Pyro, I've prepared your mineral supplement the way your scales need it, dissolved in the ionic solution. The Queen watched, fascinated, as Aara served meals that were perfectly calibrated not just to draconic dietary needs, but to each child's individual requirements. This human had taken the time to research, to learn, to understand that young dragons needed specialized nutrition for proper scale development and flame production. Aara, Pyra said around a mouthful of protein, will you help me with my flame control practice today? Of course, little star. But we'll do it in the proper chamber, not the corridor. And will you show me more about molecular phase shifting? Pyro added. After your educational pod session, Aara replied, ruffling his head ridges in a gesture so naturally maternal it made the Queen's chest tight. But it was what happened next that truly stunned her. Pyra accidentally knocked over her hydration unit, spilling ionic solution across the table. The Queen braced herself for the explosion of temper that young dragons were notorious for, the flame breath, the roaring, the destructive tantrum that would require disciplinary action. Instead, Pyra's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm sorry, Aara, I ruined breakfast and made a mess and... Hey, Aara said gently, immediately moving to kneel beside the child. Accidents happen. It's just spilled liquid, not the end of the universe. But I'm supposed to be better, Pyra sniffled. I'm supposed to be exceptional. The Queen found herself leaning forward, straining to hear. You are exceptional, Aara said firmly. But being exceptional doesn't mean being perfect. It means being wonderfully, uniquely you. Spills and all. She cleaned up the mess without fuss, prepared a new hydration unit, and kissed Pyra's forehead. The child's emotional meltdown ended as quickly as it had begun. That evening, the Queen continued her covert observation as the family settled into their evening routine. She watched Riker help both children with advanced academic work that would challenge university students, his patience never wavering even when Pyro's engineering calculations accidentally triggered a minor power surge. She watched Aara mediate a disagreement between the twins about research project resources, helping them find a compromise that let both pursue their interests without competition. Most remarkably, she watched both adults tuck the children into bed with the kind of tenderness she remembered from her own daughter's childhood, the gentle touches, the whispered reassurances, the lingering kisses on scaled foreheads. Father, she heard Pyro whisper, are you happy we stayed with you instead of going with grandmother? More happy than I can express, Riker replied quietly. Aara, Pyra's voice drifted from the other bed, will you always be our family? Always, little star. Nothing in this universe could change that. The Queen retreated to her guest quarters, her mind spinning. These humans weren't just caring for her grandchildren, they were raising them with a love so deep it had transformed 2 grieving orphans into confident, secure children who knew their worth. On the third day, she made her presence known during the children's afternoon meal. "Grandmother!" Pyra exclaimed, seeming genuinely pleased to see her. "Would you like to share mealtime with us?" "Aara makes the best flame-seared proteins in the sector," Pyro added proudly. The queen accepted their invitation and found herself seated at their small family table, watching as Aara served her a perfectly prepared draconic meal without being asked what she preferred. "How did you know?" the queen asked. "Pyra and Pyro told me about your favorite foods," Aara replied simply. "I wanted to make sure you felt welcome." As they ate, the twins chattered about their studies, their projects, their friends at the educational pod. They spoke of their father's work with obvious pride, of Aara's patience with obvious love. They were bright, confident, happy children who happened to be dragons. "Tell me," the queen said finally, "about your mother. Do you remember her?" The twins' chatter quieted. "A little," Pyra said softly. "She smelled like starlight and safety. She used to sing to us in the old language," Pyro added. But, the queen prompted gently. "But Aara sings to us now," Pyra finished. "Different songs, but they make us feel just as safe." The queen looked at Aara, who was quietly listening with tears in her eyes. "You honor their mother's memory," the queen said. "I try to," Aara replied. "They've told me about her. She sounds like she was wonderful." "She was my daughter," the queen said simply. "And she would have loved you for loving them." On the seventh day, the queen made her decision. She called a formal family meeting, with all four of them present in the family quarters rather than the official reception chamber. "I came here to take my grandchildren home," she began. "I believe they belonged with their own kind, learning their heritage, preparing for royal duties." The twins moved closer together, hands finding each other. "But I have learned something this week," the queen continued. "Home is not about bloodlines or heritage or duty. Home is about love. And my grandchildren are home." She turned to Aara. "I have a proposal for you." Aara straightened, her protective instincts flaring. "Your Majesty. You have raised my grandchildren with more wisdom and love than some of my own court members raised their biological offspring. You have honored their draconic heritage while helping them embrace their humanity. You have given them something I, with all my power and resources, cannot." "What's that?" Riker asked quietly. "A normal childhood. Stability. The knowledge that they are loved for who they are, not what they represent." The queen paused, her ancient eyes soft. "I am offering you formal adoption into the royal line." The room went completely silent. "What does that mean?" Aara whispered. "It means you would be legally recognized as their mother. It means no one, not even I, could ever take them from you. It means they would have the protection of the crown while remaining exactly where they belong." The queen smiled, an expression that transformed her terrifying features into something almost gentle. "It means you would be Princess Aara, mother to Prince Pyro and Princess Pyra." "But I'm just," Aara began. "You are the woman who saw two grieving dragonlings and chose to love them," the queen interrupted. "You are the woman who learned their dietary needs, their educational requirements, their emotional languages. You are the woman who made them feel safe enough to be children again. In my culture, that makes you the most royal person in this room." Pyra and Pyro looked at each other, then at Aara, their eyes wide with hope. "Does this mean you'll really be our mother forever?" Pyra asked. "Does this mean no one can ever make us leave?" Pyro added. Aara looked at Riker, who nodded encouragingly, then back at the queen. "And we can stay here? All of us together?" "Commander Riker has been granted permanent custody as well," the queen said. "Consider it a diplomatic alliance. The Celestial Dominion will be under royal protection, and I will have the peace of mind that comes from knowing my grandchildren are exactly where they should be." Aara knelt down and opened her arms. The twins flew into them, a tangle of scales and wings and pure joy. "Yes," she whispered into their hair. Yes to all of it. Riker found himself pulled into the family embrace, and for a moment, even Queen Seraphina's eyes looked suspiciously bright. There is one more thing, the Queen said after they had composed themselves. I will be establishing a permanent embassy on this station. I find I rather like being a grandmother, and I have missed far too much of their lives already. You're staying? Pyro asked excitedly. Visiting regularly, the Queen corrected. I have an empire to run. But I will be here for birthdays, educational achievements, first flame ceremonies, and any other significant events in my grandchildren's lives. And for Sunday dinners, Pyra added hopefully. The Queen laughed, a sound like distant thunder mixed with silver bells. And for Sunday dinners. 6 months later, Aara stood in the observation lounge of the Celestial Dominion, watching the stars whirl slowly past. The formal adoption ceremonies were complete, the royal paperwork filed, and life had settled into a new rhythm. Admiring your kingdom? Riker asked, joining her at the viewport. Our kingdom, she corrected, leaning into his warmth. The marriage proposal had come 3 months after the adoption, and neither of them had been particularly surprised. The twins had been planning it since her first week on the station. Mother. Father. Pyra's voice called from across the lounge. Come see what we built. They turned to find the twins standing proudly beside an elaborate molecular sculpture that seemed to bend light around itself. It's a representation of quantum family dynamics, Pyro explained seriously. The bonds that hold us together even when we're apart, Pyra added. Very impressive, Queen Seraphina said, emerging from behind the sculpture where she'd been examining their work. Though I believe you've accidentally created a minor spatial distortion. We know, the twins chorused happily. Isn't it wonderful? Riker laughed and put his arm around Aara. Just another normal day in the most extraordinary family in the galaxy. As they gathered around the twins' latest creation, Aara reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She'd started as a woman fleeing a loveless marriage, desperate for any chance at independence. She'd found something far more precious, a family that chose each other every day, a love that transcended species and expectations, and the knowledge that sometimes the most royal thing you can do is simply care for someone who needs it. Family meeting, she announced suddenly. What's wrong? Riker asked, immediately alert. Nothing's wrong, Aara smiled. I just wanted to tell all of you that I love you. Even when you create spatial distortions in the observation lounge. Even when we accidentally phase through the hull during hide-and-seek. Pyro asked hopefully. Even when we set the molecular kitchen on fire during cooking experiments. Pyra added. Even when I schedule 3 diplomatic meetings in the same time slot. Riker contributed. Even when I arrive unannounced and demand immediate audiences. Queen Seraphina asked with a slight smile. Especially then, Aara laughed. Because that's what families do. We love each other not despite our quirks, but because of them. The twins rushed to hug her, and she found herself surrounded by her chosen family, her husband, her children, even her formidable mother-in-law who had become one of her dearest friends. Besides, Pyro whispered conspiratorially, you should see what we're planning for your birthday. Please tell me it doesn't involve temporal mechanics, Riker said weakly. Only a little bit, Pyro assured him. Queen Seraphina chuckled. I believe I'll stay for that celebration. It sounds exceptional. As they stood together in the observation lounge, surrounded by stars and love and the occasional spatial distortion, Aara knew she was exactly where she belonged. She'd found her home not in a place, but in the hearts of beings who saw her as she truly was, not perfect, not flawless, but perfectly herself. And in the end, that was the most royal gift of all. The end.